Welcome to our talk show, Complicated Communication. We're your talk show hosts. I'm Logan Bynum.
I'm Alex Benavides.
I'm Jennifer Perez.
I'm Anthony Arana.
I'm Liza Martinez.
And I'm Ariel Thomas.
And today we're going to be talking about the social penetration theory.
Yes, this theory is one of my personal favorites.
I completely agree.
And I agree with you guys too. So tell me, Anthony, what exactly is this theory?
Well, this theory goes over how we develop a close relationship with a person or a friend or even more.
Interesting. And how does that work?
Well, this theory goes over how we develop it does this through showing that relationships are dependent on the knowledge that we share with those around us. Do you have anything you can add to that, Ariel?
I think you explained it perfectly. Jennifer, any chance you could give us a quick rundown of the topics we'll be going over tonight concerning this theory?
Yes, let's get into the creators of this theory. Irwin Altman and Dalmas Taylor. We'll figure out the context of the theory and then go further in depth with the theory. With that being said, let's get started.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. As she said, we're first going over the theorists, Irwin Altman and Dalmas Taylor. These two theorists created the social penetration theory. They worked together to make it in 1973. I'll first be talking about Irwin Altman. He was born July 16th, 1930, in New York City, New York. He's currently 91 years old and has a bachelor's, a master's, and a doctorate. He got his bachelor's from the New York University and both his master's as well as his doctorate from the University of Maryland. He's also joined a large amount of associations, like more than 10. Well, a couple of these are the International Association of Applied Psychology and the Western Psychological Association. Most of his associations that he's joined have to do with psychology, but not all of them. Beyond that, he's also an emeritus faculty member at the University of Utah. Our other creator who made the social penetration theory is Dalmas Taylor. He's the other main contributor to this theory. Born on September 9th, 1933, in Detroit, Michigan, he joined the U.S. Army before he decided to go to school. He eventually became a psychologist. However, he first obtained his bachelor's in chemistry at the Western Reserve University. He then switched to Howard University, where he would obtain a master's in science. Finally, he obtained his philosophy doctorate at the University of Delaware. Beyond just becoming a psychologist, he wrote a couple books and became the director of a program in the American Psychological Association. While he did many great things in his lifetime, he has died in his sleep on July 26, 1998, peacefully. But beyond that, I think we're going to be going on to our next topic by Alex Benavides, the context of the theory.
Thank you, Logan, for that in-depth look at our creators. So let's get into the context of theory. Altman and Taylor wanted to find the answer to the question, are relationships systematic and predictable? So let's go back to the beginning. While Altman worked as a research psychologist at the Naval Medical Research Institute alongside Bill Haythorne, they studied the importance of interpersonal relationships in isolated groups. At this point, though, research had already been done on the demographic factors, such as gender and culture. However, studies had not gone into depth on the effects of isolation. So for this, they created a study where they paired 18 men, and they were matched by demographic factors and placed into a control group and a test group. The test groups revealed more about intimate topics during the confinement period than the control groups. And the results of this study led to important developments of the social penetration theory. After this, Dalmas and Taylor created the social penetration theory, and they describe it as the reciprocal behaviors that occur between individuals in the development of an interpersonal relationship. The social penetration theory helps us understand the strengths and weaknesses of relationship development. It helps us understand exactly how we can keep one healthy and how to avoid possible dissolution. And a perfect example to discuss this would be the new Netflix series, Love is Blind. So this show follows 15 men and 15 women that participate in a speed dating format where they are pressured into proposing to one another before going to the next stage. In this image that we see to the right, they are placed in these weird pods and they are meant to talk through a wall. So most propose by the end of the 7-day period. And the day of the wedding, some say I do, while the others say I don't. Only 2 of those 15 couples, unsurprisingly, were successful and are still together today. Everyone else had a failed wedding. This theory can help answer the questions as to why the majority failed. There was little to no development, and they proposed without going through the onion process. Jennifer will later go into depth to describe this, but in short, the couples failed to reach that depth in getting to know the other person. The theory describes that in order to successfully maintain a healthy interpersonal relationship, the beginning stages should be extended in order to peel away as many layers as it takes to reveal one's entire personality. Only then could we understand if the other person is a good fit to maintain a healthy relationship with, or if we should just call it quits. And this is exactly what the couples in Love is Blind failed to do, as they were pressured to quickly get to know 15 other contestants before choosing only one to marry. And after 2 seasons of runtime, the success rate has only been 33%. So I guess that's it for the context and the issue. So we'll pass it over to Jennifer.
Great, thank you for that. So now I will cover the theories of the social penetration theory and the key concepts and their relationship. Let's get into it. So first is the personality structure. So this is when they say people are like onions, the onion analogy as the social penetration theory is most known. People are like onions because like an onion, there's multi-layers to it. And there's also the outer layer that equals the public self, right? The outer layer is what people can see, surface level information. And then the deeper you go, the more context sensitive the information will get. In order to find out this information, this is when we get into the self-disclosure. Whenever you, this process is the transferring of information from your hidden self to your open self. Self-disclosure is reciprocal, both is exchanged, and self-disclosure increases in breadth and depth as the relationship increases. Next, we'll be talking more about depth and breadth. So the depth of the penetration is how intimate is the information that's being exchanged, right? So at first, surface level information is exchanged sooner than more frequent than private info. When you first meet a person, you know, you're kind of learning you start at the different levels, like the superficial level, then you go into intimate, personal, and then you get to the core. So penetration is rapid at the beginning, but then it slows down as soon as you get closer to those inner layers. So basically the depth of the penetration is how personal or sensitive the information is that you're sharing. Then the breadth is basically the range of subjects or topics that are being disclosed. For example, you have a friend that is dealing with some family issues. The breadth is basically knowing what that family issue is, whether it's the sister, brother, mom, or dad, knowing that range of that breadth of penetration, that's what it is, okay? And then they're both equally important and both determine the level of relationship. And with this being said, there's a law of reciprocity which is an orderly process in which openness in one person leads to openness in another. So it's an exchange of information with both people. Next, we go into the social exchange theory. So this is once that when you get into this is once you have established those relationships, it's basically the analysis of the benefits of the cost of your friendship or the relationship you are in. The comparison level is the amount of reward you feel you should receive. It's the expected outcome of the relationship, what people feel they should receive in a way of rewards and cost from a particular relationship. And then the comparison level is also based on past experiences. This is what your worth is, what do you feel like you deserve, versus the comparison level alternatives, which refers to what you feel you could gain from being in a relationship with someone else. This is when they say the grass is always greener. So if the comparison level alternative is low, then you'll remain in that relationship because you don't have to worry about, oh, maybe things could be better in another place, right? So the ideal situation for this is that your outcome is greater than your comparison level alternatives and that your comparison level alternatives are greater than your comparison level.
And with that, we're going to move on to our ad break section. We need to pay for this talk show, and the way we do that is through ads. So today we have Blockbuster. There's only one more Blockbuster store that exists in the entire world, and they've sponsored us today. All the way out there in Utah, there is a Blockbuster store, and if you need a movie, you can head to Utah, and you can get yourself a movie from Blockbuster. They have a wide selection of movies of at least 3 different movies, and if you go now, you may be able to rent one of those 3 movies. So please, for our sake, or for the sake of the movie, go check out Blockbuster.
Welcome back into this deep dive into the social penetration theory, but let's see why the theory was proposed. When you hear proposal, you may think marriage, but in this case, we mean that they wanted to create such a theory and why they would want to create such a theory, and some more explaining on the connections of some other ideas. We already discussed that the theory is like an onion being multi-layered, but why would they compare to such? Altman and Taylor would propose a process that would help explain how those close relationships form. The proposal would help them form what the 2 theories call the onion layers. With this comes the backbone of the theory we call the social penetration theory. For as what Jennifer mentioned before, the deeper the layer of the onion, the tougher it gets. This is compared with the personality of a person. An example of this is on the outer layer of the onion, that would be your taste in food, how you see the world, or what type of clothing you like. And the deeper you go, and the inner layers of a personality would be what type of religion you would practice or who you believe who you are. They were onto something in the beginning of this theory, and their finding would create the theory that we have today, a theory to help us develop close relationships with each other and why we develop these close relationships with each other.
Thanks, Anthony, for covering the main proposals. Now I'll be stating the weaknesses and strengths of social penetration theory. The weaknesses of social penetration theory is that it first may perceive individuals to be selfish and the cost outweighs benefits. The next one is that theory assumes that every individual's goal for a relationship is intimacy, which is not always the case. Some may stay on the first stage, who knows? And the third one is that it is a linear structure. Some relationships may skip steps or may add steps. And now for the strengths of the theory is that the first and foremost, it is a simple theory to understand. The second one is that understanding the model of theory can help individuals who have a balanced relationship. And the third one, it helps someone understand why someone's relationship failed or succeeded. First of all, the weaknesses and the strengths of the social penetration theory are overweighed by the weaknesses. The relationships are too complicated to be reduced into a simple theory and equation. Therefore, the weaknesses overweigh the strengths of the theory because they may perceive an individual to be selfish, assumes that everyone's goal in a relationship is to reach intimacy, and maps out a relationship to be a linear model when some relationships skip steps, add steps, or they jump into another step. Now I'll be passing the spotlight to Ariel.
Thank you. Now let's examine the use of social penetration theory. When it comes to the application of this theory in real life, we can see it executed in many ways, whether it be moving in with a new roommate, going on a first date, or meeting your new coworkers for the first time. Social penetration theory sticks to the same straightforward formula. First, you'll meet and consider outcomes. For example, if you're on a first date, you will likely think about where you want the relationship to go or what you want out of the relationship prior to or during your date. Next, you will share information and begin the penetration process. This consists of self-disclosure in which one person will share some personal information. The rule of reciprocity states that the other person will share personal information as well, and social penetration theory states that the information will get more intimate and detailed as time goes on. Finally, based on how the relationship is progressing, the people can either continue or depenetrate. Going back to our first date example, once the acts of self-disclosure and reciprocity have been successfully completed, you may go on several more dates and form a close relationship. You can either continue on this path, revealing more personal information or layers as time goes on, or you can depenetrate, which means that you slowly withdraw yourself from that person, revealing less and less. Both endings are a gradual process. Environmental factors can also play a role in how and what we disclose. If you are meeting someone at a quiet, high-end restaurant, you are a lot more likely to engage in thought-provoking conversation than at a loud party. There are social cues that let us know when some information may or may not be appropriate to disclose. While parties with loud music are a great time to dance and have fun with your partner and friends, we know that it is also not the right time for self-disclosure because of the things going on around us. Something else that factors into what and how we disclose is the dialectical model. This states that people desire both intimacy and privacy, causing an inner conflict between disclosure and closeness. Social penetration theory offers a solution to this turmoil. By revealing only a little bit of personal information at first, we maintain that boundary of privacy versus intimacy. We can then make the decision to either loosen these boundaries, creating a strong depth of penetration over time, or we may keep them surface level. Which decision we choose to make depends not only on our personal desired outcome, but also the environment and what we desire for ourselves on an internal level. So how does social penetration theory hold up now and in the future? With all these new ways to access people and their personal information, how do we maintain that boundary of privacy versus intimacy? Will social penetration theory continue to ring true as an effective form of communication? In many ways, social media has vastly altered the ways in which we communicate. It is now pretty easy to find deeply personal information about someone without their knowledge or direct consent. One can simply lurk through someone's Instagram profile to find this information. One relatively recent communication woe is ghosting, or the act of withdrawing from a relationship without warning and typically without consideration of how this will affect the other person. Another communication phenomenon that has been popularized by social media is trauma dumping, or the act of revealing deeply personal information, again without warning and again without consideration of how this might make people who view the post feel or react. However, even with things like lurking, ghosting, trauma dumping, and many more communication situations that will inevitably come about in the future, I think that social penetration theory still holds up and will continue to do so because it precisely explains the fundamentals of relational communication. While the aforementioned communication woes do happen, none of them are good examples of how to communicate effectively. Social penetration theory presents a way to develop a relationship while still accounting for how both parties are impacted. As we move further into online spaces and presumably even more reliant on technology in the future, social penetration theory will still provide an essential backbone to the way we communicate with others and form relationships.
Man, that was a lot of information. I hope that you guys have gotten at least a little bit out of this. This has been our talk show, Competent Communications, and throughout this talk show, we gave a brief look into the life of the two creators of this theory, Erwin Altman and Dalmas Taylor. These two theorists both got doctorates and have done many things throughout their lives. While Dalmas Taylor is still alive While Dalmas Taylor died in 1998, Erwin Altman is still alive to this day.
And that is really incredible. Maybe next week we can invite him for an interview. So I guess we also took a look at the context of this theory and how it relates to the new Netflix sensation, Love is Blind. We learned how we can maintain healthy relationships and also how we could avoid dissolution. So yeah, that's basically it. Maybe we can learn something or two from watching that show.
You're muted, by the way,
Mm,
Jennifer.
In order to cut through the layers, it all depends on how much is disclosed. This is another thing that we learned, when breadth and depth increases, the relationship progresses. And once relationships are established, you analyze the cost and benefits of the relationships you are in order to make a decision on whether you want to continue or, end that relationship. So keep in mind, cut through those layers, get to know people. Depth and penetration are key.
Yeah, and the proposals we looked at, it may not have been much, but still is the backbone of the theory that we call the social penetration theory today, and will still be very important throughout years to come.
And I talked about the strengths and weaknesses of the social penetration theory, which the weaknesses overweigh the strengths of this theory. What did you go over, Ariel?
I talked about the use of the theory in the present and the future. All of this is relevant because forming relationships is a vital element of human life.
I'd love to again give a shout out to our sponsor for the show, Blockbuster.
Well,
Go Blockbuster.
well, thank you all
With
for
that-
joining us in Competent Communications, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.